The shocking truth behind my mother's lies. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. Please don't call anyone, my mother said, fingers tight around my sleeve, the kitchen bright as a stage set. I had just come off a 12-hour hospice shift, name badge still clipped, brain stuck in the rhythm of vitals and quiet promises. In training, we memorize codes and obligations. Protect the vulnerable, respect the truth, sign only what you can defend at 2 a.m. under a fluorescent light. In our town, the vulnerable turned to my mother, Valerie, the treasurer who knows every pantry shelf by touch, the fundraiser who charms reluctant wallets open like stubborn windows. People call her a lighthouse. I call her Mom, and I know where the shadows fall when the bulbs hum. On the counter lay a heavy envelope with a rubber-banded belly and a credit union strip peeking like a tongue. It's from the harvest drive, she said quickly, smile pinned in place. I'll deposit it in the morning. The safe is fussy tonight. The smile didn't reach her eyes. I set my palms on the cool counter and told her what I tell families when the first hard conversation knocks. Early is kind. Delay is cruel dressed as mercy. She pressed the envelope closer to the toaster, as if heat could unmake questions. Who I am matters here. I'm Noah, 31, good with pain charts and broken stories, bad at pretending a ledger balances because people clap. If I report what I suspect, I risk my job, my reputation with families who trust my voice, and the thin thread holding my sister and me near our mother's orbit. If I look away, I become part of the lie tightening around our house like ivy. She squeezed my sleeve again and whispered, "Give me one day. P." I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I understood the next step would cost more than love itself. Our family story sounds beautiful when strangers tell it back to us. Valerie the saint. Valerie who stayed when Dad didn't. Valerie who baked, who prayed, who found coats for cold kids and canned peaches for tired grandmothers. She made generosity into choreography, lists, jars, ledgers and looping letters, color-coded tabs, a way to stand in a room so people felt lucky to be asked. We give first, she said, tapping a pen like a baton, and we, Talia and I, learned our marks. We knocked on doors with envelopes. We rang bells with smiles timed to the beat of the town's need for a hero. When I was 19, home from CNA classes, she asked me to help process Christmas donations at home, less risk of mix-ups. I held a receipt that read, "Reimbursement, utilities with our address." "Temporary," she said, voice bright, cheeks pink. I wanted dinner, not conflict, and the myth handed me a plate. The next morning the church thanked our tireless treasurer, and I decided being grateful was easier than being exact. Last month, she asked me to drop a sealed envelope into the credit union night slot for a donor's privacy. The return address showed a P.O. box I didn't recognize. "Don't make this a thing," she said, pecking my cheek, laugh glittering like ribbon. I typed the box number into my notes and told myself trust was the same as patience. It isn't. Trust has records. Patience has reminders. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I keep remembering how easy it is to confuse warmth for proof when a town wants a hero and you want a mother who never needs anything from you but applause. Red flags started like gnats, small and annoying, easy to shoo. A donor at the pantry asking for a tax letter never mailed. A hospital invoice peeking from under Mom's sugar canister with the amount circled twice. 2 receipts for identical canned goods with different totals, and a neat reimbursement, Valerie, scrawled by a careful stranger. Admin delays. Mom said, pouring coffee that smelled like comfort and distraction. I wanted to believe. Belief is a joint that bends until it snaps. At the credit union, an older man told me a deposit had bounced and that he'd try again Monday with the gentleness people use for small embarrassments. That word bounce thudded in my chest like a dropped book. At home, I stared at the box digits on my phone like they were coordinates on a map I didn't know how to read. Sleep arrived late and thin. Morning brought the practical version of dread, a list. I wrote things I'd ignore if Valerie were anyone else, then added dates and amounts in the margin as if numbers could calm me. In the hospice break room, I copied the list while the microwave hummed and a nurse laughed too loudly at nothing. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I rechecked every line because doubt loves shortcuts, and I refused to give it one while the numbers waited for a reader who wouldn't blink. After Sunday service, Valerie corrected me in front of everyone about the grief group schedule, smiling so wide it read as kindness. Wednesdays, she chimed. We'd changed it to Tuesdays in August. People chuckled. Saints get the benefit of the doubt, and their sons get the soft pat reserved for forgetful helpers. That night, a text lit my phone. Overdraft protection activated for the community account. The alert arrived because years ago I helped her set up two-factor and my number stuck like a burr. I drove to the farmhouse. She sat at the table with the ledger open like it might bless her hands. Timing issue, she said before I spoke. Deposits lag. Why is my number on treasurer alerts? I asked. Because you don't panic, she replied sweetly, sliding a folder across the overdraft line like a magician hiding a trapdoor. Lasagna steamed, oregano fighting the scent of something burning. When she made tea, I checked the church email on her laptop. 17 subject lines blinked like hazard lights. Missing receipts, audit questions, donors needing letters by law. A draft said, family emergency, delayed reports, unsent, dated last month. Outside, tires crunched gravel and moved on. My training spoke. If a pattern appears, document it. I took photos of the screen with the steadiness I reserve for morphine doses and next-of-kin calls. The room brightened, my gut dimmed. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I printed policy summaries and underlined them like scripture, not to win an argument, but to keep my spine from improvising when the room warmed to her smile. The town's angel had used my number for her alarms. She says you're interrogating her, Talia blurted when I called. My sister lives above the hardware store, the discount mom negotiated by promising community partnership flyers. She took care of us, Noah. I heard the plea to stop tugging at the cloth that makes our history look smooth. Tired people don't falsify dates, I said, and the sentence sounded colder out loud than it did in my head. Silence stretched. She didn't falsify anything, Talia answered, which wasn't the same as she didn't lie. Uncle Ray texted, bait shop. He handed me a notebook instead of a hug. Dates, amounts, who said what, he said. You don't challenge a legend with feelings. He told me about 2009, when the church quietly covered our mortgage and Valerie chaired the committee that approved it without noting the conflict. She was drowning, but she steered the boat anyway, he said. People clapped because we made it to shore. I wrote the overdraft timestamp, the donor's missing letter, the bounce deposit, the Oh, box. If I dig, I could destroy her, I said. Ray lifted a shoulder. If you don't, she'll do it herself, plus take you with her. He looked at the tide sliding under the dock like time under a door. Document. Don't confront empty-handed. And remember, loving someone doesn't mean letting them keep their favorite lie. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. Back in my apartment, I arranged Ray's notebook beside my hospice bag and made 2 columns, documents and memories, because memories beg to be edited and documents don't beg for anything. The locked tin wasn't cute, it was intentional. I found it behind jars labeled Peaches 19 and Peaches 20, the labels all in Valerie's schoolteacher script. The key hung on a nail behind a chipper magnet that hid a small V scratched into the paint. Inside lay check images clipped to reimbursement slips that used different pens and 2 kinds of handwriting. A hospital bill folded to the size of a playing card listed a procedure date 3 months after the outreach van fully funded post. A printed email from Valerie Care at Proton. Me asked certain donors to route through a temporary box for privacy while we restructure. The box number matched the envelope I dropped at midnight last week. I photographed each document and felt the dates hang around my neck like wet towels. On the burner email's reset page, the recovery hint read, First choir solo. I heard the opening bars of How Great Thou Art in my head and swallowed back the urge to guess. My job's ethics hovered like a weather station. Report misuse, protect trust, never launder harm through good intentions. Valerie taught me to look people in the eye when they tell the truth. I was learning to look paper in the eye when they don't. The back door creaked. What are you doing? She asked. Organizing, I said, putting the lid on the tin like closing a mouth. She covered it with a dish towel as if cold could hide it and smiled with only her teeth. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I wrote the tin's contents into my log in neat lines, because neat lines keep my voice from shaking when rooms tilt toward charm and away from arithmetic. Noah, she whispered, I know where everything goes. The credit union's lobby glowed with clean glass and practiced calm. I asked for Ms. Patel, the manager, and explained I had concerns about a nonprofit account and wanted to understand procedure, not pry into details. Dual signatures over 500, she said, tapping the policy with a manicured nail. Audit trail for reimbursements. Separate contact numbers. I took notes like a student who finally cares about the exam. Outside, Ray leaned on his truck like a guard dog who reads bylaws. At the courthouse records room, the clerk smiled at Valerie's name. The file showed a late renewal and, stranger, a vendor license to VM Services, Suite B, at our old address. Our house has no suites, only one long hallway where Talia and I learned to tiptoe during fights. A former volunteer, Shannon, met me for coffee and said, I loved your mom. Then, quieter, when I asked for gas receipts, she called me small. Shannon slid me a copy of her polite resignation. It didn't accuse, it documented. I highlighted timestamps that didn't match social posts. A truck repair logged at 10:12 a.m. The same minute Valerie uploaded photos of an outreach luncheon across town. Patterns don't shout, they repeat. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I drew arrows between timestamps and posts, between receipts and routes, and the page began to look like a map of a coastline I knew by heart and had never actually seen from the water. The what assembled itself neatly, like placemats laid for company. Rounded withdrawals, boutique vendors disguised as fuel stops, transfers into VM services on days the pantry reported urgent needs, and medical fundraisers for patients our hospital ledger didn't recognize. Charity skimming. Forged reimbursements. Fabricated crises recycled with new names. Every piece sat still until you looked from one to the next, then the table spun. Stakes snapped into focus. Talia's rent discount had been greased with pantry partnerships. Uncle Ray's bait shop cooler wore Valerie's name in vinyl letters as big as his day's profit. The church's reputation balanced on a jar with a false bottom. I printed backup statements from shared drives, circled transfers, and stuck tabs like stitches along the binder's edge. The highlighter squeaked. I kept going because squeaks are kinder than silence when the truth lands. Mom texted, "Potluck tonight. Bring rolls?" I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I opened a fresh yellow pad and drew a straight timeline across it, pinning each transfer with a verb so my mouth would remember facts when the air got theatrical. I made a binder because binders look boring and boring is safe. Tabs read bank, emails, receipts, notes. I saved a voicemail where Valerie asked me to hold donor letters till after the audit. No need to confuse people, and backed it up 3 times. On a page titled Conditions, I wrote 3 lines. Full transparency to the board, a repayment plan administered by council, therapy with a licensed professional not connected to church. If she agreed, we could soften the blast radius. If she refused, the blast wouldn't be ours. Ray reviewed the binder and grunted approval. "You're ready for a lawyer," he said, and introduced me to Attorney Silva, whose office smelled like old paper and rain. Silva spoke like a medic in a storm. Calm, specific, unsentimental. "Do not accept private repayments," they said. "Do not confront a loan. Document notice. Understand tax exposure." I wrote exposure and felt my teeth click. I copied the exhibits and slid them into an envelope labeled Talia. I wanted my sister to see ink, not gossip. On the binder's first page, I wrote an instruction to my future self. If she cries, read the next line. If she bargains, read the next line. If she blesses and curses in one breath, read the next line. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I added a short script to the inside cover so my mouth wouldn't improvise when she switched from tears to thunder and back again in the space of a breath. Potlucks make everyone generous with stories. Under strings of year-round lights, casseroles steamed, and the donation jar sweated. Valerie moved in a blue dress, pressing palms, collecting thank yous like pearls. She kissed my cheek loudly and whispered through her smile, "Don't ruin dinner." Uncle Ray stood by the coffee urn like a lighthouse, without rhetoric. Talia waved from a table of volunteers. Her laugh drifted a few feet, then fell, as if the air itself had decided to stop helping. After, I told Valerie. We talk. Tears rose in her eyes on command. About what? She trembled just enough for the room to lean in. About dates and documents. She nodded as if I'd complimented the potatoes. During dessert, she told a new story about a widower surprised by a hospital bill, and cash folded into the jar with the soft hush of fabric. The choir began, "How Great Thou Art." I watched Valerie press her pendant and try on 3 faces in a row: injured, wise, obedient. Uncle Ray touched my shoulder. "Now," he asked. "After," I repeated, and felt the words scrape my throat. Valerie caught our glance and widened her smile until it looked painted on. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I stood by the door twice and didn't leave, because leaving would have felt like complicity in whatever version of the evening she wanted written by dessert. The jar filled, and I realized hesitation weighs more than truth when your town applauds. I texted Silva and Ms. Patel. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., glass conference room. Both confirmed within minutes, language so clean it steadied my lungs. I sent Talia the invite with "Please come. I want you to see before anyone edits." She replied with a small "okay," then nothing. I slept like a guilty witness, briefly, badly. Ms. Patel laid out water and a printed policy sheet. Silva arrived with a thin pad, all quiet edges. Valerie came last, alone, wearing the pendant like a medal and the expression of someone prepared to donate forgiveness. "What is this?" she asked the room, sitting like she sat in committee chairs for 20 years. "A chance to fix mistakes," I said. Talia slipped in and looked at the table like it might bite. I opened the binder and set the tabs in a neat fan. Ms. Patel explained dual signatures, audit trails, and alert contacts. Silva defined commingling, prohibited benefit, and notice. I read the dates. Valerie listened with a patience that wasn't patience. It was rehearsal. Then she turned to Talia. "Your brother resents my calling," she said softly. "He lives small and calls it noble." I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. The glass walls made everything look polite, which is one reason I brought copies. Politeness can blur. Paper refuses the soft focus a practiced smile invites. Talia stared at the paper and squeezed her own hands hard enough to whiten the knuckles. We connected the laptop to the wall screen and let the paper speak. Receipts bloomed across glass like X-rays. "Here," I said, highlighting boutique purchases logged as fuel. "Here, the solicitation telling donors to use a temporary box. Here, transfers into VM services on fund drive days." Ms. Patel pointed to withdrawals without a second signature. Silva, voice even, said, This pattern shows misrepresentation and private benefit. Valerie lifted her chin. I am efficient, she said. People trust me. Silva's finger rested on the binder. Efficiency does not replace controls, they said. After today, continued activity escalates exposure. The word exposure changed the air. Valerie turned on me with a heat I've only seen aimed outward. Ungrateful boy, she said softly, dangerous. I fed you. I built this pantry with my own hands when your father left. You taught me to honor truth. I answered, and my voice didn't shake. Talia whispered, Mom. Valerie's eyes filmed with practiced tears. Stories save lives, she said. People give because I make them feel the need. Silva nodded once. And the law protects donors and beneficiaries, they said. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I felt the room tilt toward denial the way a deck tilts under a sudden wave. So I kept the cursor slow and the highlights square until the sea steadied. Consequences move faster than apologies. Ms. Patel initiated a review and froze withdrawals beyond essentials. Silva told me to write a memo documenting notice and chain of custody, then suggested I find a parking lot and cry in peace. I did, forehead on the steering wheel, breath counting ladders. By evening, the board scheduled an emergency session. By morning, Valerie posted a photo of folded hands captioned, God knows, and the comments bloomed with hallelujahs and side eyes. At work, my supervisor offered time off. I stayed. Continuity matters when bodies fail and families fray. The gossip grew legs. The hospice break room, the grocery store, Talia's landlord, who asked if the arrangement still stands. Talia called, voice shredded. Are you satisfied? She asked. I might lose my apartment. I told her about restitution and oversight. She told me about shame and loyalty. Uncle Ray found a key slid under his shop door with a note. Traitor. He laughed once, then swept it into a drawer he keeps for sharp things no longer needed. At the board session, Valerie paced, then offered a bargain. Let me fix this quietly. Silva said, written plan with oversight, or we file. Valerie turned the room into a congregation with one practiced breath. He wants to destroy me, she said, pointing at me like I was a sermon illustration. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. In the quiet after the meeting, I wrote what I wanted to forget and labeled each page so I could not soften the edges later with nostalgia or loneliness. Healing looks like paperwork and weekends without applause. The board required Valerie to step aside. Silva drafted a restitution schedule with monthly milestones and receipts filed to the cloud where no one can charm them. Therapy, too. Real sessions, not coffee disguised as confession. Talia moved in with Ray for a while, and I sat at his kitchen table making a budget with her that did not include miracles. She applied at the clinic and texted me, second interview, with 3 sun emojis that looked, for once, unperformed. Valerie called, then hung up twice. On the third try she said, you can't love me and do this. I said, I love the part of you that wanted to help before the story needed an audience. Silva told me to keep the voicemail. I kept them all. My own counselor asked me to list what I can control and what I can't. I wrote, facts, boundaries, how I speak. It felt small and enormous. We put conditions in writing. If she met milestones for 6 months, I'd drive her to appointments. If she missed one, I wouldn't patch the hole. It sounded cruel until I slept through a night without checking my phone. Small routines filled the space spectacle used to occupy. Eggs in a pan, clean scrubs folded, a tire changed in Ray's driveway while Talia laughed grease into her hair. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. Some nights I wanted to call and fix it all with one soft promise. But promises without paperwork are just warm lights over an unlocked door. I pass the church on my way to the early shift and still hold the door for whoever's behind me. Courtesy is not complicity. Valerie meets the board monthly and a therapist weekly. Some days she weeps and signs checks. Some days she posts verses like bandages and waits for him in. People decide which Valerie they prefer. I don't correct them. I keep receipts and keep my voice calm. We celebrate Talia's clinic offer with pizza on the dock, paper plates, and a cooler that no longer advertises our family name. The water lifts and lowers us like a breath. I'm proud of us, Talia says, and her voice sounds like the girl who learned to tiptoe and now stomps on purpose. Ray toasts with seltzer and calls it victory because it is. What I learned costs more than a tidy sentence. Love without truth turns into control. Truth without love turns into punishment. The work is to braid them slowly, like old rope, and let the rope hold. If you are listening because your family's story is louder than your family's reality, write everything down kindly and precisely, and let the paper help you be brave when your heart wants to forget. Ask for help. Accept it. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I noted times, dates, and amounts to steady my thinking. I keep a single folder in the cupboard marked plain facts, not to dwell, but to remind myself that courage is a habit and habits are built on small, boring choices made kindly. And believe that quiet Tuesdays can be holier than any standing ovation.